Many years ago, in a small village not far from Asaba, there lived a girl named Daniela. She had grown up among people who believed life should follow a straight line from birth to marriage, without too many questions in between. The village itself had a way of holding people in place. Morning came with the sound of pestles hitting mortar, and evening gathered everybody outside to a feast of gossip without invitation. However, Daniela had always felt slightly out of place in that rhythm. Every day, she wondered what kind of life exists beyond the village, and anytime someone returned from the city looking glamorous, Daniela would watch them with a hunger that had nothing to do with food. One evening, as she sat outside with her mother peeling cassava with more force than necessary, she said, "Mama, I will not stay here forever." Her mother did not look up immediately. She continued peeling and then asked, "Where will you go?" "To Enugu," Daniela replied, as if she had already bought the transport fare. Her mother sighed. "City life is not what you think, my daughter." Daniela smiled. "It cannot be worse than this one." Her father, who had been listening from the doorway, cleared his throat and said, "Anything that looks easy from far is usually carrying trouble on its head. If you insist on going there, use your sense. Don't follow anybody who smiles too much." Daniela nodded. "Yes, Papa." But inside her, the decision had already taken roots. The day she left, her mother packed food as if she was sending her across a desert, while her father gave her money that looked small but mighty. As the bus carried her out of the village, Daniela sat by the window with her eyes fixed on the road ahead. Her mind was already building a life that had not yet agreed to exist. By the time she arrived in Enugu, the sun was high, the air was different, and the city did not even pause to welcome her. People moved with purpose and cars passed without apology. Nobody asked her where she was coming from or where she was going to. At that moment, Daniela understood that the world can ignore you completely. She adjusted her bag and began walking. She went up to a woman standing in front of a shop and said, "Excuse me, please, are you employing?" The woman looked at her from head to toe. "For what?" "Anything," Daniela replied. "I can clean, I can cook." The woman shook her head and said, "No space." Daniela nodded and moved on. At another shop, she tried again. "Please, I need work." The man did not even look up. He just said, "No vacancy." She kept walking, but by evening, her legs had begun complaining and her stomach had joined the protests. Hunger stripped her of any confidence she had. Daniela stood in front of a small food store, watching a woman serve steaming rice to customers who did not look at her. The woman suddenly asked, "Are you buying or you are just supervising my business?" Daniela smiled awkwardly. "I will come back." The woman laughed. "You people always come back tomorrow." Daniela walked away before her eyes betrayed her. Unfortunately, night came without offering her any solution. She found a wooden bench near a closed shop and sat down carefully, as if the bench might reject her if she moved too fast. The mosquitoes arrived before sleep came, and cold followed. Every sound felt louder than it should be. A passing car made her sit up. Footsteps made her hold her bag tighter. She slept, but not fully. Each time her eyes closed, something woke her again, as if the city itself was reminding her that she did not belong yet. By morning, she looked like someone who had argued with the night and lost. The second day did not improve anything. Hunger grew bold and increased its voice. Daniela found herself standing near a junction, not because she had a plan, but because standing still felt better than walking without direction. That was where she met one woman. The woman called her, "My daughter, you look like someone who has not been welcomed by this city." Daniela turned slowly. The woman was neatly dressed. "I just came yesterday," Daniela replied. The woman nodded as if she already knew. "From where?" Asaba, Daniela replied. The woman studied her briefly. You have not eaten, right? Daniela hesitated. Then she shook her head. The woman's expression softened. You cannot continue like this. This city can swallow people who have no direction. Daniela listened carefully now. My name is Mama White, the woman continued. There is a place I know. They help young girls. They give food. They give a place to stay. You will not suffer like this. Daniela blinked. For free? Mama White smiled. Yes, it's for free. Daniela's chest fell with relief. She did not ask too many questions because hunger is not patient enough for investigation. Come, Mama White said, and Daniela followed. They walked for a bit and the compound they entered was clean. The walls were well painted and the floor looked recently washed. A few young women moved around calmly, dressed well, looking like people who did not worry about where their next meal would come from. Daniela's shoulders relaxed without her permission. This place is nice, she said. Mama White nodded. This is where God helps people. Inside, a man sat speaking to a small group. This is Pastor Ebenezer. He is the pastor of the church. His mission is to help and give shelter to people like you, Mama White said. Daniela lowered her head slightly as they approached. Daddy, Mama White said, this is the girl. Prophet Ebenezer looked at Daniela with a gentle expression and said, You are welcome. Thank you, sir, Daniela replied. You are safe here, he added. That sentence entered Daniela's heart deeply. Safe. It had been less than 48 hours in the city, but already that word felt like something she had been searching for without knowing. That evening, Daniela ate properly for the first time since she arrived in Enugu. The food tasted better than anything she had eaten in the village. Not because it was special, but because hunger had prepared her for it. She washed, laid down on a mattress and stretched her body slowly, as if confirming that the comfort was real. God has helped me, she whispered to herself. Across the room, another girl lay on her side watching her. Her name was Gifts. Gift did not talk. She only shifted slightly and rested her head on her arm, as if she had seen so many new girls arrive with the same relief on their faces. Daniela turned toward her and smiled. Good evening. Gift nodded once. Evening. Daniela waited for more because in her village, that greeting would have opened a full conversation by now. Someone would have asked, where are you from? Who is your father? Do you know so and so? But here, silence followed. Daniela tried again. I just came today. Mama White brought me. Gift's eyes remained on her. I know, she replied. Daniela laughed. This place is good, eh? Gift did not answer immediately. She only adjusted her blouse and turned slightly on the mattress. At last she said, it is a place. Daniela frowned a little. That was not the kind of answer she expected, but sleep was already pulling her down. Since hunger had been settled, her body had found rest, and her mind did not have strength to chase strange answers. So she closed her eyes and drifted off. Gift kept watching her for a few seconds more, then turned to face the wall. When morning came, Daniela opened her eyes slowly and stretched, smiling to herself. This one is not suffering, she murmured. She sat up and looked around. The room was already active. Two girls were folding clothes. Another was adjusting her hair in front of a small mirror. Gift was already dressed. You woke up early, Daniela said. Gift nodded. You will get used to it. Daniela quickly stood up and smiled. I like this place. Everything is organized. Gift looked at her. Yes. But again, her tone carried something Daniela could not explain. Later that morning, Mama White gathered the girls in the sitting area. She stood in front of them and began. My daughters, you are not here by accident. The girls sat quietly. Daniela sat upright, listening carefully. This is a place of help, Mama White continued. A place where lives change. Daniela nodded slowly. She liked the sound of that. Yeah, you will be taken care of, Mama White said. But you must also learn discipline. One girl asked, "What kind of discipline, ma?" Mama White smiled. "Simple things." She raised one finger and counted. "No leaving the compound without permission." Another finger. "No unnecessary movements." Another finger. "No discussing what happens here outside." Daniela blinked slightly. That last one tasted differently, but Mama White continued as if nothing was unusual. "These rules protect you. The city is not safe for careless people." Daniela nodded. Okay, that made sense. The city had already shown her that. As the day moved, Daniela noticed that nobody rushed or argued. Everything felt controlled. By afternoon, food was served again and Daniela ate with satisfaction. "God really remembered me," she said, shaking her head in amazement. One girl laughed at her. "You have not even stayed long." Daniela smiled. "I will stay well." However, it was when evening came that Daniela noticed something different. Two girls began preparing. Not normal preparation, no. This was serious preparation. They changed their clothes and sprayed perfume. One of them asked, "Is this okay?" Mama White looked at her and smiled. "Better." Daniela watched with curiosity. "Where are they going?" she whispered to Gift. Gift did not look at her. She just said, "Out." "Out where?" Daniela asked. Gift shrugged. "Outside." Daniela laughed. "You people like hiding information." Gift finally looked at her. "Some information hides itself." Daniela frowned. That sentence did not make sense. As the girls moved toward the gate, Daniela saw a man she later got to know was Brother Ikechukwu. Standing there and watching, he did not speak or smile. He simply stood like someone whose job was not to talk. Daniela leaned closer to Gift and said, "That man looks like a soldier." Gift nodded. "He is worse." Daniela laughed again. "You like exaggeration." Gift did not respond. The gate was opened and the girls stepped out. Brother Ikechukwu followed them closely and the gate was closed again. Daniela remained standing there for a moment. Something about that scene disturbed her slightly. That night, as she lay down again, she turned to Gift and confidently said, "This place is better than outside." Gift looked at her in the dim lights. "Yes, it is better than outside." Then she turned away. Daniela closed her eyes to sleep, but this time, sleep did not come as quickly. She lay on her bed staring at the ceiling. The room was too quiet. Back in her village, the night always came with the sound of crickets and distant voices of someone coughing or laughing. Life never fully slept, but here, everything seemed controlled, even silence. She turned slightly and whispered, "Gifts." No answer came. She waited and called again, "Gifts." This time, Gift responded without turning. "Sleep." Daniela hesitated. "Those girls that went out, do they go every day?" Gift remained still for a moment and then said, "Almost." "To do what?" she asked. Gift shifted slightly. "Work." Daniela frowned. "What kind of work?" Gift finally turned to face her. "You ask too many questions for someone who just arrived." Daniela laughed. "I am just trying to understand." Gift held her gaze for a few seconds. Then she said, "You will soon understand." She turned away again and Daniela stared at her back. That answer, "You will soon understand," sounded like a warning. The next day, Daniela tried to follow the routine. She woke up, cleaned up, ate, sat with others, smiled and observed. But her eyes had changed. Before, she had been looking with gratitude, but now she was looking with curiosity. And curiosity does not rest easily. That afternoon, Mama White called her again. "Daniela." "Yes, ma," she replied. "Come." Daniela followed her into the same small office. Prophet Ebenezer sat there, calm as always, as if time moved differently around him. "Sit down," he said. Daniela sat. He studied her briefly and said, "You are adjusting well." "Yes, sir." "You are a smart girl," he said. Daniela lowered her eyes slightly. "Thank you, sir." He leaned back in his chair and said, "You did not come to the city to suffer." "No, sir," Daniela shook her head. "And you would not suffer here," he said. If it were before, Daniela would have smiled sheepishly, but now the sentence made something inside her heart shake. "There are people who help," he continued. "People who can change your life." Daniela nodded, even though she did not fully understand. Mama White stood beside her smiling. "You are lucky," she said. Daniela smiled nervously. Lucky, yes. That was what she had been telling herself. Later that evening, she sat outside with gifts. The sun was going down slowly and the compound looked peaceful. Daniela asked her, "Have you ever tried to leave?" Gift's body stiffened slightly. She slowly turned. "Why would I leave?" Daniela shrugged. "I'm just asking." Gift looked at her carefully. "Leave for where?" Daniela paused. That question, leave for where? She did not have an answer. Gift nodded slowly. "Exactly." Then she stood up and said, "Come inside." That night, Daniela did not lie down immediately. She sat on the edge of the bed watching the room, watching the girls, watching Gifts, watching everything. And then she noticed something new. One of the girls returned very late. She entered without smiling or greeting and went straight to bed to lie down. Daniela whispered, "You are back." The girl did not answer. Daniela looked at Gift. Gift shook her head slightly, a sign that meant don't try it. Daniela kept quiet, but her heart had begun beating faster. Later in the night, Daniela heard something soft. At first, she thought it was the wind. Then she listened carefully. It was not the wind. It was crying. Someone was crying quietly, as if she did not want to be heard. Daniela sat up slowly. Her eyes moved around the room. But the sound was not coming from inside. It was coming from somewhere else around the building. She looked at Gift. "Did you hear that?" Gift did not respond, even though her eyes were open. Daniela lay back down slowly. Her body rested on the mattress, but her ears refused to rest. The quiet crying continued. It rose, then stopped, then came again like someone fighting to swallow pain. Daniela whispered, "Gift." Gift did not answer. She turned her head slightly again. "Gifts." This time, Gift spoke without looking at her. "Sleep." Daniela frowned. "But someone is crying." Gift exhaled slowly. "Yes." "Who is that?" Daniela asked. Gift did not say a thing. Daniela pushed again. "Who is crying?" Gift turned her face toward her at last and said, "You would not sleep if you keep asking questions." Daniela sat up halfway. "I cannot sleep when someone is crying like that." Gift held her gaze for a few seconds. Then she spoke in a low voice. "That is how it always starts." Daniela blinked. "How what starts?" Gift turned away again and muttered, "Understanding." Morning soon came and Daniela woke up with heavy eyes. The crying had stopped at some point during the night, but the memory of it remained inside her chest. The compound looked normal again. Girls were sweeping. Someone was laughing. Mama White was shouting from one corner, "Who left that plate there?" Life moved on as if nothing had happened. Daniela stood by the tap, washing her face, but her eyes moved around carefully. She was looking for the girl who came back late. She saw her. The girl was sweeping quietly. Her face looked blank. Daniela walked close and said, "Good morning." The girl paused briefly. Then she nodded once. "Morning." Daniela asked her, "You came back late yesterday." The girl's hand stopped moving for 1 second. Then she continued sweeping. "Yes." "How was work?" Daniela asked, but the girl did not answer. Daniela waited, but the silence spoke louder than words. Later that day, Mama White called Daniela again. "Come." Daniela followed her. Inside the office, Prophet Ebenezer sat as usual. "Sit down," he said. Daniela sat. He smiled and commented, "You are settling well." Daniela nodded. "Yes, sir." "You are a strong girl," he said. Daniela smiled small. "Thank you, sir." He leaned forward slightly and then said, "There is an opportunity for you." Daniela's heart moved. What kind of opportunity? Mama White answered quickly, "Good people who can help." Daniela looked at her. "Help? How?" Prophet Ebenezer explained, "They support girls like you." Daniela nodded slowly. "In what way?" He smiled. "You will understand when you go." That evening, Gift sat beside her and said, "You've been called again." Daniela nodded. "Yes." Gift looked at her and asked, "What did they say?" Daniela hesitated. "They said it's an opportunity." Gift laughed bitterly. "Of course, yes." Daniela fully turned toward her and asked, "What is happening here?" Gift looked around. Then she leaned closer and said, "Listen to me carefully." Daniela held her breath. "When they call you for opportunity, don't argue." Daniela's heart began beating faster now. "Why?" she asked. Gift looked straight into her eyes. "Because the first time you argue." She stopped. Daniela whispered, "What happens?" Gift leaned back and smiled. "You heard the crying." Daniela frowned. She was getting confused by the day. That night, Daniela did not sleep at all. She lay there thinking about every moment. "This place is not safe," she whispered to herself. That was the first time she said the truth clearly since she arrived. The next morning, Mama White entered the room early. "Daniela, prepare yourself." Daniela sat up. "For what?" Mama White smiled. "Your opportunity." Daniela's throat went dry. "Today?" "Yes," Mama White nodded. Gift turned her face away. Daniela noticed and her hands began to feel cold. They gave her clothes. Not her clothes. These were different ones. They were too fitted and too bright. She looked at herself and shook her head. "This is not me." Mama White adjusted her hair. "It is now." Daniela's heart started to beat harder. "I don't understand." Mama White smiled again. "You will." Outside, a man stood waiting. He was tall and strong. His face carried no expression at all. Mama White spoke to him. "Take her." He nodded. Daniela looked at him. "Where are we going?" He did not answer. He only gestured. "Move." Daniela hesitated. Gift stood at the doorway watching. Their eyes met, and for a brief moment, Gift's eyes said everything her mouth could not. Daniela stepped forward slowly. Her mind was running, but her body was walking. The man walked behind her too closely, like someone guarding something that must not escape. Daniela whispered, "I want to go back." The man said nothing. She stopped walking and insisted, "I said I want to go back." He didn't shake. He simply commanded, "Move." Daniela's chest tightened. "I don't want this opportunity," she said. The man stepped closer and ordered, "You do not decide that." Daniela stood at the door for a moment. Her body felt strangely light, not with peace but with emptiness. Behind her, the man waited without impatience, as if time belonged to him, and in front of her, the world lay open, wide and ordinary. "Open it," he said. Daniela opened the door and the air outside touched her face gently. It was free, fresh and normal, which almost made her laugh because only a few steps behind her, nothing was normal at all. They walked toward a car parked by the roadside. The man opened the back door and ordered, "Enter." But Daniela did not move at once. Her mind had begun to move faster than her fear. She remembered Gift's eyes, the way they spoke without a sound. She remembered the crying in the night. She remembered the silence of the girls who no longer asked questions. And something inside her burst open. She smiled bitterly and said, "I need to ease myself." The man frowned as if the request was an inconvenience. "What?" "I need to use the toilet," Daniela replied. No, the man refused, but Daniela placed a hand on her stomach and bent slightly. "I cannot hold it." The man watched her carefully. He looked up and down the streets. People were passing in the distance, moving in their own small business. Nothing in the open air suggested danger. So he exhaled slowly and said, "Be fast." Daniela turned back and pretended as if she was headed towards the compound. She walked slowly, as if she was really pressed. The man remained where he stood, watching her patiently, like someone who believed there was no real escape. As she reached the gates of the compound, something changed inside her. The fear did not disappear, but it found direction. She passed the gates of the place where she believed help had found her. Then suddenly she ran. Her legs moved before her mind could stop them. She ran into the streets. Her slippers struggled to follow her feet. People turned to look. "Hey, why is she running?" She did not answer. Behind her, the man shouted, "Stop, stop her!" But Daniela did not turn back. She knew that if she looked back, she might slow down. If she slowed down, she might be caught. And if she gets caught, there would be no second chance for her. So she ran until her strength left her. Then she stumbled into a busy roadside where life was loud and careless. Women sold their goods and men argued over prices. She bent forward, breathing heavily. A woman touched her shoulder and asked, "My sister, what happened?" Daniela lifted her head slowly and cried, "I need help." That was how her journey ended before it even began. Days later, news started to fly that a young lady escaped from a place that called itself a prayer house. Meanwhile, in reality, it was a brothel wearing a Bible. As for Daniela, one evening, she sat by the roadside where her running had stopped. Her body had found rest, but her mind had not forgotten everything. She thought about the first night, about the food that tasted like mercy, about the bed that felt like safety, and about the exploitation that had worn the face of kindness. She shook her head slowly and said to herself, "Not everything that looks like help is safe." Then she stood up and walked freely, choosing where her feet would carry her from then on. Hi besties, thank you for watching this story. This story is dedicated to our birthday bestie, Daniela. Happy birthday, Daniela. May this new year bring you God's choicest blessings. Please besties, let's wish her well in the comment section. If you enjoyed the story, kindly give the story a thumbs up and share the story out with your loved ones. Subscribe to this channel if you've not done so by now. Until I bring another story your way. Bye!